Hello everyone, hope you're doing well. We are having a look at the updated BR changes for January of 2024 because they've just released the updated changes, and well, we're streaming, so might as well kill two birds with one stone and get through them. There's a bunch of changes here. They're doing a ton of revisions. It looks like they're taking into account a ton of feedback this time for specific vehicles, and I've got to say there are a decent amount of changes to it, which we'll go through all of them in this video, so there won't be like different parts. Everything will be in this one. Unfortunately, naval has stayed exactly the same, so obviously that there's not really anything to cover there. But if you want to see the BR changes themselves, which we'll go through, I'll leave links in the description so you can have a look at them. They also give a ton of justifications why they are they did a bunch of justifications why they're making certain changes, so we'll go through them, and it's always interesting to see the logic behind certain ones. So for example, we have the Strella. So you know how we talked about the Strella and how powerful it was like a few weeks back, and how it was really good and super powerful? Well, they're not just putting it up one BR bracket, they're putting it up two now. So it's going to go up to 10.0, and in 2 weeks they're going to change its rank from rank 6 to 7. It seems like with a lot of these changes, they're going to bring in a lot of economy changes in a few weeks, and a ton of these ones will be a part of them too. So for example, not just the Strela going up in rank, there is also a few others, like the HE111H3 is going to be grouped with the BV138C1 for some reason, which, I mean, is fine because it means it's easier to grind. It just seems like a very odd maneuver to do. It's just a very weird one to go after. They also put in a big justification for the French stuff, and this is worth reading because I've been saying it for many years now. The French mid-tiers, like rank 4, 5, and 6, are insanely powerful. They are crazy powerful, and it says here, we're still going ahead with these as the previous increase in reload speed has significantly bettered their efficiency figures. So once again, they bumped their BRs, and they thought, okay, so if we put up their BRs, they won't be powerful enough, even though we have to, according to our stats, so we'll buff them as well. And hey presto, what happens? They have to go up again because you buff them. Just like the IPM1. I thought the IPM1 was going to be a fantastic example of why you don't put up something's BR and also give it better things. Because what happens is it creates a kind of, it creates a catalyst for people to go play it, to get the new thing, to see how it feels, and then they go, oh, this thing feels really good, and then bang, they go at it again, and then it gets raised in BR again, and now it's higher than I think the M1A1, or at least similar in BR. So the French tanks are exactly the same. Every time they up their BR, they also gave them something. Maybe this time they might as well with, you know, different stabilizers or maybe different rounds. But you can see here, right, we're still going ahead with these as the previous increase in reload speed has significantly bettered their efficiency figures, where these French tanks are 60 to 70% above the average at their rank, and 7 of the top 10 most efficient light and medium tanks at rank 5 are French, right? Which is just nuts when you think about it, especially with the vast majority of players playing other nations. But this is what I've been saying for such a long time, right? The French tech tree in ground is my favorite tech tree to play because it is completely busted and has been for a long time. Every time people complained about the EBRs going up in BR, the reason was because they were insanely good. Every time the MX-13s got bumped in BR, the same reason. Same with the Char, the Lorraine, every single vehicle. Up to like 8-7 with France, they're incredibly fun to play. Ridiculously enjoyable, and there are some, you know, damp squibs around the place, but around this area, they're just so fun. They're insanely fun. So yeah, not a surprise to see them go up, and not a surprise over and over and over again to see them go up. It kind of reminds me of the Carnarvon and Centurion situation, where they just kept bumping them. So yeah, they're going to increase the BRs of the Char 25T and MX-50 TO90, but they're also not going to put up the Samoa or the EBR. So those ones are staying lower, so we'll have to see what goes on. Also, they'll probably change them again because, I don't know, they just won't leave them alone. The MiG-29G's going up, R-73 and countermeasures, pretty much it. The J8F is also something that they're thinking of. And then probably the biggest issue that I personally have is this one right here. So we've talked about the problem with how to balance things, right? We've done a few videos kind of going through the different ideas and the way that general design decisioning works, right? So first you have gut instinct, which is usually, depending on the person, pretty good, but a lot of the time can be a problem. Secondly is statistics. Statistics is easily the best way of dealing with these things because the vast majority of the time it shows you what is, good at the time and also what is bad. It also gives you the biggest pool of let's call it like truth of a situation. The third thing is human input or feedback. This to me is the weakest of it, especially when it comes to War Thunder, which is a game pretty much designed so you can't play everything, and also it's incredibly hard to play everything, and the vast majority of people who comment on feedback posts are incredibly focused on specific nations and specific vehicles. So what happens is you get a very biased view of what people want. And what we see here is exactly that. With the Mirage 2000 CS5, the F5E, and the F5E for China, these aircraft are highly efficient. But after reading your feedback and comparing the changes to other top aircraft, we decided to postpone this change and we'll look at their efficiency when the max battle rating for aircraft increases. So for some reason, they're invoking a rule for these vehicles, even though they're doing insanely well at their current BR. They're just invoking a rule because there's so much pushback about these being changed. Stuff like this can't happen, right? They cannot happen in this type of ecosystem because it means that there are rules for some and not for others. You have to keep everything at a base level and make sure that everything is treated equally. Right now, with this change, that is not what is happening. These vehicles are doing insanely well. We talked about the F5E during the winter event and how powerful it was at its BR. With a BR increase on the top, it will do even better because of how the BR ranges will set themselves up. It'll still be really good in a few weeks unless they add a vehicle just to annihilate it for some reason, but that's not going to happen. So the fact that they are going back on that and they're just going to put it up in a few weeks anyway, I don't know why bother. And also, why are you not using this logic for every other single vehicle around those BRs? Even the P51s, if you want to go through that, because technically if you change the top BR, it then shifts all of the different areas where people play, right? It shifts the meta BRs, it pushes stuff around, you get to decompress certain areas, and it moves and shifts what people play. Why is this logic not used for everything else in the aviation trees? It's very annoying when they do this. Then you have the GR7 going up in SB, the J7D as well. The F104G, surprisingly for China, they are moving down in BR, but that's pretty much because it doesn't have any countermeasures. But for some reason, the other Gs are allowed to have countermeasures, but not the Chinese one, even though we have many precedents over many years of vehicles having countermeasures, which shouldn't have countermeasures, but because of other variants of them did have countermeasures, they're allowed countermeasures, such as stuff like the F104S, the F5A, the F5C, all of these different vehicles. The F104G is no different. If they just gave it its countermeasures instead of not giving it, then this wouldn't be an issue with the vehicle, and it would be a hell of a lot more fun to play. The P51D10 is also going down in BR, but none of the other P51s, which is kind of funny. And one of the most hilarious changes to me is the T20. So it's going up in BR again. We talked about the T20 a bunch. Like, it's just a vehicle which can't find its place in the game, right? It has a lot of factors which are very powerful for it, but it also has a lot of factors that kind of hold it back from being really, really good. And because of that, it sits in this weird doldrum area where it just cannot find itself, a nice area, right? And it's just going to keep moving up and down in VR because it doesn't have like a set place, and because it has a very good transmission and a stabilized 76, it's just going to keep going all over the place. But don't worry, don't worry. So what they've decided to do is they've given it an APCR round. We all know how good APCR rounds are, so this will solve all of the problems. Probably not, though. The interesting thing, though, as well, is the Merkavas. So you may not know this about the Merkavas. This was actually pointed out by Alex a while ago to me. The Merkavas don't have the right reload. So you can see if you compare a standard Merkava to, let's say, you know, a vehicle with just like a standard 120. So you see here how all of these 120s for the Abrams have a 6.5 second reload. If you go to the Leopard, it also has a 7.8 second reload on its 120mm, right? On the Leopard 2A7, the PSO has a 7.8 second, which, you know, is pretty interesting. The Challenger 3 has a 7.8. So, you know, 120mm, 7.8, fair enough. TKX, obviously autoloader, Ariete, I think has the 7.8. But if you have a look at the Merkavas, the Mark 3s and the Mark 4s, they have an 8.7 second reload. So they have the standard 105 reload and not the 120. And they've just always had that. Why? Who knows? They just did. I'm guessing Israeli players were just amazing until now, or maybe they just realized that they'd cocked up. I don't know. Just seems really odd because they finally brought the 120mm standard to the Merkavas. It took like 2 years, but it's finally here. Also, the M60A3 TTS, you no longer have to use APDS as a stock round. Instead, you have to use heat. So it should be a little bit easier to grind, though, since they're moving the M416 to rank 1. And I believe that's the round that you want to get on the M60A3 TTS. It's the one which is, well, it has the M735, sorry. No, the M416 is the smoke shell, my bad. So that one really doesn't matter. But the M735 is at rank 3 now, so it's easier to grind than it was before. The Magax also get a better fire rate, so not just the standard Israeli Magax, but also the other M48s, which are in different trees, which is nice. And they're massively buffing the 2S25M. I mean, I haven't played the 2S25M. You know, we recently spaded a lot of that lineup, where a lot of it's changing now. You know, the good old Strella is going up to 10-0, and I spaded the 2S25, and it was really fun, right? And the difference between the 2S25M and that is this already gets a better round and also thermals, but they're giving it 3BM60, which is the highest echelon Soviet round. You know, like that's the round which a lot of people use at the highest tiers, this one right here. And also they're giving it a better ATGM. So I'm guessing the 2S25M isn't doing very well. But for me, I mean, it seemed to be doing okay, or at least the other one was. We'll give the 2S25M a go, and I'll see how I feel about it. The lineup isn't as strong anymore, but at least you still have the Strella now. So yeah, and then the 2S3M, they're going to group with the 2S1s. That's obviously positive. These vehicles are similar, and it makes sense that they're going to put them together. They should start grouping more and more stuff, you know, especially stuff like the 2S1. Like the 2S1 is pretty rough to play. And once again, the HE113, the Heinkel H3 is going to be grouped with the BV138, which just seems really odd. Now, all of these BR changes and a few more are kind of shown in the actual data. So the T95, for example, is also not going up. So it's staying at 7 OBR. I mean, I can get that. The T95 is one of those that's never really going to sit anywhere and make sense. It's another one of those which is super map specific, so it's actually more dependent on what maps are on and also what the BR matchmaking is around it instead of it itself, and that is, you know, a little bit odd. And then you have all of the changes we talked about before, and aviation wise, The P51 is going up to 3.7, but the P51 D10 is not going up to 4.3. So that will obviously change lineups in certain areas. The Toucan's going down, or the bathtub, as I like to call it. The A29, I'm not surprised by this at all. Anybody who has played these J29s knows how bad they are. They are awful machines. They don't fly well, and it made no sense that the A29 was higher BR than the J29, even though they both basically are the same. The only difference is the A29 got access to some rockets, whereas the J29 doesn't. That's literally it. But the vehicles themselves are awful. Like they feel bad, they do not feel great to fly, and just because you get some rockets shouldn't mean that you get an up BR. Also, the J8F they're not putting up in BR, but they are putting up the MiG-29G. But that's pretty much, how all of the setup is. It would have been nice to see some more naval changes, just to shake up some of the lower BRs, but looks like that hasn't really been touched. And the SP stuff, a few vehicles has been touched, but nothing too crazy. So are these changes positive? Most of them are pretty good. The Merkavas are getting their correct reload, so are the export M48s. And a lot of these BR changes are alright. I would keep the F5E one specifically. But the other thing I would also say is I did a video more recently talking about some vehicles that I feel like are just completely forgotten about because they're just not really played. Stuff like the M41D at 80. Right, this vehicle just being here, it's so sad and depressing. Even just think about it now, how the Char 25T is going to be the same BR as it. And even then, I would take the Char 25T every single day over the M41D. It's faster, it doesn't get the thermals, but they're not as required. And then also it's smaller and more agile and a better transmission and better armor as well. Like it's just nuts. But that's a story for another day. I think it's nice to see these updated changes. It's nice to see they're taking in player feedback. I just don't want... If you have a situation where you have a group of people on the forums who are saying don't do this because, we like the vehicle or these separate factors, just please go with the stats. Because as we know, in all social media in War Thunder, it does not represent even like a decent fraction of the community. So I'm really, really worried if we're going to use the F5E as a precedent, especially since it could be used in such a negative way in so many different areas. As always, though, I hope you have a wonderful day. I'll see you next time. I'd like to thank Schnitzel Stroker, Brendan Quinn, Vilneus, Character Fuel, Carrion Crow, Nicholas Richardson, Gus Irenicus, Pyman, Wartinder, Teddy, Daniel Stanton, B. Young, Opium Prime, Masonocrat, Lafouche, Alan Hacker, Sem Arslan, Uncle Bean, and Derek R. for supporting the channel.